Today's guest is someone who's seen it all in one of Connecticut's most storied real estate markets. Russell Pruner is a licensed real estate broker. He's based in Greenwich with over 40 years of experience. He's got over 500 transactions and more than $1 billion in career sales. Now, he isn't new to the industry, as I said, over 40 years. He originally earned his real estate license back in 1985. He launched his own brokerage in 89, and he spent that 4 decades earning that type of reputation that most agents strive their whole career for. We're talking about six-time president of the Greenwich Association of Realtors, Greenwich Realtor of the Year, and a business built entirely on referrals and repeat clients. He's also an avid golfer. Now, today, Russell's part of the Greenwich Streets team over at Compass. He's one of the team leaders. And whether you're buying your first home, you're downsizing, or positioning a luxury purchase, Russell will bring the same data and information he brings to all his clients, patience, and a track record that speaks for itself. So, Russell, welcome to the show. I'm really glad to have you.
Thanks, Robert. Great to be on your show.
All right. So let's start out by talking about how did you get into real estate? Everyone's got a crazy story. Nobody wakes up and says they want to be a realtor when they grow up.
Yeah, I actually started in the oil and gas business, and with my father in Greenwich, we raised risk capital and drilled oil and gas wells in West Virginia, Oklahoma, and Texas. And just like any industry, it went to hell in a handbasket. And I'd had a degree in real estate and finance from Southern Methodist University in Dallas, and looked around, and all my parents' friends were, selling residential real estate. I said, can't be that hard. And, basically just decided to go interview at the top firm at the time, William Pitt in Greenwich. And I knew the guy who was the manager. He hired me on the spot. And basically I thrust myself into, an area that I didn't know that much of, and thought it was going to be easy, and found out there's a pretty steep learning curve to, be able to sell a town you grew up in.
Yeah, that's really unique to be able to continue on that legacy after, being there, living there, experiencing the lifestyle. So, other than Greenwich, because I know that's your focus, can you talk about some of the other areas that you work in Connecticut? I assume Lower Fairfield County.
Yes, we do some, but I've got experts in each town. The way that Compass works is as an incredible referral network of over 33,000 agents around the country. So I spent my time in building that referral network. And as one of my partners said, you shouldn't be selling in a town you don't know where the dump is. So I don't know where the dump is in these other towns. So instead of, going and trying to fumble my way through, in another town, what I decided to do was, stay steadfast in Greenwich and seek out people like myself in those other towns and refer the business so that they're making sure that the client's interests are taken care of by equally as a talented agent in other towns in Lower Fairfield County.
No, that's a great point, and it's something I hone in a lot with my clients when they're picking an agent. You don't want an agent selling you a house in Greenwich that lives in Hartford, with all due
Exactly.
respect. And you don't
Yeah.
want an agent selling you a house in Hartford that lives in Fairfield or New Canaan or
Yeah.
Ridgefield. Why? Different markets, completely different, like night and day.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, I always try to make sure my clients are paired up with a realtor that specializes in the area for sure. I found a
Yeah.
lot of agents at least pick a county, but what you're talking about, really honing in on specific towns, I
Mm.
think that's unique. I think most agents don't do that. They try to be a jack of all trades. They try to be, something to everyone. And, you can find yourself in a sticky situation. I can tell you, seeing how transactions work in certain luxury markets versus other
Mhm.
areas, night and day. And if you don't know it,
Yeah.
if you don't understand it, if you haven't lived it like you, Russell, then you know what? You're probably not going to have a successful transaction. And even if you do, it's going to have unnecessary stress, extra issues that come up, speed bumps you have to work through. So I think that's a great, just kind of a great point right up front is work with an agent that's a specialist. And if they're not, have them refer you to someone that is a specialist in the areas that you're looking for. Because normally, people aren't just looking in one town. They're usually saying, okay, I'm looking at this area, these couple towns, especially in Connecticut, where a small area can have several little towns there. So let's kind of shift for a second and talk about the market right now, because it's a unique market. We're in mid 2026 right now. Most areas of the US are having real estate issues, meaning it's a buyer's market in a lot of areas. But here in
Yep.
Connecticut in the Northeast, we're not seeing that at all. It's a night and day tale, as we've seen in other markets, right? I've been doing this 25 years, you've been doing this 40 years. Like during 2015, the market was completely different than today. And many
Mhm.
people don't realize or understand that Connecticut was stagnant for real estate growth for decades. And all of a
Yeah.
sudden it wakes up during COVID and people think, oh, wow. But everyone else kind of saw this coming that had been in the industry. We saw the pent up demand. COVID made it explode. So, what are you seeing in the market right now?
Historically low inventory levels. We should have, we're 2 weeks away from usually the peak of our inventory, which pre-COVID was in the 500 homes to show people. Right now, we've got 108 as of last Friday. And if you're looking for something under $3 million in Greenwich, I probably have less than 12 homes to show you where I normally would have maybe 50. So it's been very difficult. A lot of multiple bid situations where depending on you pricing it right or not, you could get. I've seen 20 offers. I've seen three offers, but it right now I think the town's selling at 100% of the list price if it's priced properly, and in some areas we're seeing 110% of the sales of the list price. So, it's really trying to, know that market, know what's trending and how things are going, and being able to advise your clients, what the present situation is. We're a town of a little hamlet, so, each area is different and the demand is different.
Definitely. So, a lot of pent up demand, really limited inventory. That's been the tale for a while, but it seems to be tightening even more. I think that speaks to just people wanting to have a high quality lifestyle, right? And not only in the Northeast or Connecticut, but I think nationally, you say the name Greenwich, it has an association, and it's a
Yeah.
high level luxury association. Okay, and that shows itself in the demand that we're seeing, especially from people in higher cost markets like New York, LA, other areas that are moving
Hmm.
out East Coast, Connecticut, and they want luxury. And they see what you can buy at 3 million in Greenwich, that's 10 million in California or
Yeah,
other areas, right? So
exactly.
huge, huge advantage there. So talk a little bit about the type of buyers you're working with right now. Is it a lot of first-time buyers, move-up buyers, investors?
Well, I've sort of gone and over my career, I've aged up into more the senior category. I mean, I'm 69 years old, and a lot of my clients are people that I sold house to 30 years ago. So, a lot of them have seen tremendous appreciation in the market, and but they haven't done a transaction for 30 years.
Hmm.
So the key thing is to bring them up to speed on, what is entailed in listing their house. And in many cases, we do a lot of advising and work on staging and, correcting a lot of things that they might be fine with. Was in a house just yesterday, built in 1972, and it looks like 1972. And so the question is, how can we now advise them to spend some money to be able to at least what we call almost whitewashing the house to make it as generic but as move-inable as we can? It seems like most of the people in the market, whether they're first-time buyers or trade-up buyers or one and out, have been here a long time, don't want to purchase something that they're going to have to do a lot of work with.
That's for sure. And yeah, it sounds like a lot of move up buyers for you. And I could see that being the norm in the area that you work because how many people are buying their first home at 3, 4, 5 million? There are, but I would say more of those correct me if I'm wrong, someone buying a
Mhm.
$5 million home in
Mhm.
Greenwich, most of the majority are moving up from something else. They have equity somewhere. They have something that they can put down. And I know when you get into that 4 or 5 million plus range, most of those people aren't even getting financing, at least up front, right? Cash
Yeah,
buyers, they're moving equity
yeah.
from other properties, investment portfolios, lines of credit they already have available, things like that. So, again, first time buyer, 4 or 5 million, you see them, but probably not that much, right?
Yeah, they're really competing. The hard part for them is they're competing with people. A lot of them aren't buying that ultra big house. They're buying something that will be where they start the kids to grow up, and then the second purchase is usually the big one and stuff like that. So, what we're seeing is a lot of times they're getting the first time buyers getting beat out by somebody who's equity rich that basically has a portfolio that's the stock market's gone up, and so they get pushed out sometimes by an older buyer. Or what we're also seeing is a lot of for the first time where a lot of wealthy people are helping their children buy a house just because they're going to get the money at some point. Why don't we help them now and
Hmm.
help them get some appreciation down the road? And a lot of people don't need the wealth as much wealth as they've got right now.
That's a great point. And I think of deals I've done in the last year in Southport, Westport, New Canaan, every one of them had a
Yeah,
gift from family. Every single one of
yeah,
them.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Again, people don't, even if you're making 400 grand a year, you don't just work your way into a $5 million home based on
Right.
saving for a couple years. And I think of these clients, they make a lot of money, but if you only have 100 grand saved and you're buying a $4 million home, it doesn't get you very far at all, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
people have that wake up call. So I agree with you. I'm seeing a lot of gifts. I'm seeing a lot of families saying, "Hey, take the inheritance now. Let us watch you enjoy it. Let us watch our grandkids enjoy the property. As you said, appreciation, start building wealth, and get in the door." So I definitely agree with you on that. Now we all know in this industry, you have good deals, you have bad deals. You have deals that go
Mhm.
smooth. You have those that have a lot of hiccups. So for you, what does a deal look like when it goes really smooth?
A really smooth deal in this market is all cash, no contingencies. I'll close whenever the owner wants to close. I might even give them a free rent back, until they find something. But you got to be prepared. You've got to come to someone like you. If you're going to use a mortgage, you're going to need a pre-approval. You're going to have a proof of funds for the difference between the mortgage amount, what the down payment was, so that you can show the seller, look, I'm almost a cash buyer because I've done all my homework to begin with, but I will be using a mortgage. And sometimes we will pick somebody who's not using a mortgage. And, case in point, the parents will buy the house for the kids, basically, although they'll put the title in the kids' names. But as you know, they've got 6 months to then go and finance it. And basically, they return a good majority of the money back to the family as if they did it just so they could get the house.
Yeah, no, that's a strategy I've seen used several times for sure, especially in super competitive markets. I mean, I've had buyers that are pre-approved and ready to go, and it's so competitive, the family steps in and says, "Nope, we're buying it in cash just to get it done." And then, as you said, we use delayed financing, pull money back out, pay them back, whatever it may be. So, yeah, I mean, hey, what realtor wouldn't want a smooth cash deal with no financing or none of that? I
Mm.
agree with you. Now, on the other side of the coin, what's the biggest thing that you see that kills deals at the last minute?
I think, unlike a lot of agents, I mean, they just want somebody that's a warm body they can take out, and they don't educate them prior to doing that, that we need to get you to a mortgage person, get the pre-approval done, make sure we get a proof of funds letter that shows if whatever the gap is between in Greenwich, it's a 10% down payment, and you're taking in some cases at the level they're borrowing they can only go to 70%. Well, we got 20% in there. Where's that money coming from? And that's where the proof of funds letter is very important. It could be if they let you do inspections, and a lot of them go without inspections, so they're inheriting whatever, bad things might be. I've got one couple right now that bought it without inspections, but we're doing inspections after the fact so that they know before they move in, are there things that are deferred maintenance or other things like that that we need to correct, or something that's a hot water heater is 20 years old. The heating system's not good. The roof needs to be replaced. So they want to know that so that they can, you know, get some idea of what they're in for.
Yeah, most definitely. And have you ever had a scenario in your decades in the industry where you had a deal fall apart or a buyer lose a property because of the financing?
Some, yes. I mean, it just depends on what are the collateral that's being used. I had one at very high, over 20 million, that a gentleman went public on his company, and there was a downturn in the market. He was the majority owner of the company, and his stock dove down to below a level that the lender was willing to lend at. So he had to do some second tiered financing to try to come up with a price, and he couldn't find a lender to do it. He did finally find one, but the interest rate that they were charging was so astronomical because his asset value had dropped so much. He just decided to basically walk away and left a lot of money on the table.
Yeah, no, I hear that all the time. There's a lot of different reasons financing can fall apart, but the place I come from is you always want to have a plan B in this business, even a plan C, because things do happen. I don't know what type of loan that buyer was using, but it sounds like it may have been an asset utilization loan or something like
Hmm.
that, where if the asset drops 10, 15%, like it can easily do in the stock market, your financing is done. But if I were
Yeah,
the lender in that scenario, I would have already been looking at, okay, what's a different type of financing, not related to
yeah,
the assets? Because nowadays there's so many different loan programs and options. We'd want to look at a plan B for sure, but sometimes there's not one. Let's be realistic. Sometimes you can't recover. I've had buyers lose jobs. One of my first deals, the funder called the job to make sure he's still working there. He got fired the day before. Obviously, that
yeah,
deal's not closing, right? Like,
yeah.
there's very few circumstances where it can work for sure.
Yeah, another
So,
thing that comes into play now
mhm.
too, Robert, that we're seeing more and more of ever since the collapse of the condominiums down in Florida is insurance. And we're a waterfront community, so they're scrutinizing a lot more. That the other two is in condominiums, they're scrutinizing the association. Do they have they done their deferred maintenance, or do they have financial strength and all of that? And if they don't, they're either not going to lend or they're going to raise that rate, to basically make up for it. I've had a couple deals where they forced the association to basically do some deferred maintenance and then check back with them in the anniversary of the insurance the next year to make sure that it was still going. Otherwise, they weren't going to insure them.
Yeah, a lot of challenges with condos, for sure. I would definitely agree with you. Since the collapse there in Florida, what's happened is Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, really all the mortgage agencies and underwriters and all that, they have redone all the questionnaires. So they used to
Yeah,
not even ask about a lot of stuff with the deferred maintenance and whatnot. The condo questionnaire has gone from, on a full review, it went from like 2 to 3 pages to now like 6 pages for the
yeah,
same review because of all the extra questions. Now they want to see inspection reports done in the last 3 years and all these extra things.
yeah.
And my experience hasn't been a raised rate, it's been a larger down payment. So when you go from a
Hmm.
limited review, or excuse me, a full review and limited review, well, a full review, you can do it 10% down. But if the budget comes back with a major issue, now we need to switch to a limited review. Well, a limited review can require a higher down payment, depending on the area,
Yeah,
the state, all these types of things. 10%, 15%, 20% down. When you start pushing that
yeah,
down payment, at some point the buyer might say, well, I could do 5% down. I can't do 10 or I can't do 15, especially in the higher price point. So, what I try to do to vet the condos up front, because I see this happen so much, if the buyer is going to need a full condo review, which is the most intensive, I tell the agent up front, get me the budget, get me all the docs that you can before we're like through into the process, before we get appraisals, before all that. Why? Because
Yeah.
a lot of issues that can come up on the budget, I would say most issues come up to do with the budget assessments and things. If we can get a copy of that up front, then we can just mitigate that a lot earlier in the process. And if we see, oh, the budget doesn't work, they're not putting enough in reserve, well, then boom, I'm telling the client, hey, you're not buying this with 5% down. It will not qualify for a full
Mhm.
review. You need a limited review. We're going to have to up the down payment to this and make sure it still works. But I'd rather do that the first week of the contract than 3, 4 weeks in when everyone's waiting for the clear to close. And unfortunately,
Yeah.
people that don't know how to navigate that, they're getting those documents in the process, right? Knee deep in it, and then having those tough conversations. So when you're dealing with buyers, and I know you deal with a lot of cash buyers and people with family money and things, but
Mhm.
shifting to the ones that are getting financed, do buyers normally come to you pre-approved, ready to roll, or do they come to you more in the exploratory, hey, we want to buy a house, and then they need a referral or a resource with a lender, shopping for a lender?
Yeah, I don't normally work with people after the second visit. I give them referrals to three or four different mortgage people. And if they don't have a pre-approval, when we start to go out the next time, if I like them, I might give them one more thing, but I'll call those mortgage people and say, have you talked to so and so? So they'll get at least pre-approved with one, but most of the people are savvy enough that they will still want to leave open how I can go and talk to more than one lender during if there is a mortgage contingency. There are very few mortgage contingencies, at least in Greenwich, that we see anymore. If it does, if it's a multiple bid situation, they probably won't pick that person because of the fact they can go with a cash buyer.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And something that we do a lot is pre-underwriting so that they don't need the mortgage
Yes,
contingency. That's the big
right.
deal. But you need to have a buyer that's got the time, can put in the effort, right, to do the documents, to do what needs to be done. It's not you're going into an open house on a Monday, you're putting in an offer that afternoon. You're not going to be able to go through the mortgage underwriting and all this stuff. So it just lends itself to the fact that you got to be prepared. You got to lay the foundation. You're not just waking up and going buying a $3 million home or even a $300,000 home, for that matter. So when you're referring these couple lenders, what specifically do you look for in a loan officer that you're referring clients to? What qualities, what type of individuals are you referring them to?
I mean, I'd like to at least to have them have talked to a money center bank, at least one, not a local lender, although they might end up using the local lender. A lot of the people we deal with are in finance anyways. So the best lender is going to be their own company. But sometimes they won't pick that company because they don't want to open up their financial picture totally to the company that they're working for. So, it's a mixture. It really depends on the person and what they're looking for. The local banks seem to be a little bit more lenient on things because they know the market a lot better than some. I mean, some of the bigger banks, it just gets to be crazy, how much they want. But again, you're putting the package together, as you know, to give to an underwriter. The underwriter could be in Nebraska somewhere. So they don't know the market as well. So we try to keep it as local as we can because of the people that know the market, know the people, and all the people involved in the transaction.
So it sounds to me from what you're saying, you're more referring these banks and lenders based off of the company's reputation. You're not necessarily saying, go talk to Joe Smith. He is the best loan officer in Connecticut. He's your guy. Here's his number. It's not a personal one on one like that. It's more, hey, this is a great local bank, great mortgage division, done a lot of business with them. Go talk to them. Am I hearing you right?
Yeah, but I mean, just CYA for us, we never give one. We'll give at least three. And, then they'll look at you, well, which one you? Well, my mortgage is with X, company. And oftentimes you can lead them a little bit, but you still have to keep the door open and basically allow them to make the ultimate choice of what best fits their scenario down the road. And I've gone up to almost closing and they pick somebody else, and all of a sudden the guy or the woman basically changes the terms. So I got to scramble in a week to make the closing and find them a new lender almost every time that lender's a local person.
Yeah, no, that I agree with you. There's definitely a benefit to being local and knowing the local market, especially in the area that you're talking about. So I know that I've heard from a lot of agents that they get really mad about communication with lenders, specifically like getting answers, picking up the phone. How important is that to you, especially considering you do so much business with local banks, credit unions, and historically in the mortgage industry, they're considered to be the worst when it comes to
Yeah.
customer service, the absolute worst. You call someone at 5:05 p.m. on a Friday, you're getting voicemail. And unfortunately, in real estate, that doesn't work. So, how important is it to you to have a loan officer that communicates and actually picks up their phone, not just during business hours, but off times, which is when most deals happen?
Those are the only type of lenders we work with. If I don't know the lender, I'm going to get to know the lender very well, such that we're on a first name basis, and that I've got their cell number, they've got my cell number, and that the communication line stays very open because you just don't know, what you're going to need or when you're going to need it. I don't want to make sure that the client in many cases has gets to know that lender very well too, because if I can't get through to the customer, my buyer is should be the one that should be able to do it. So we're pretty good at vetting the people that we work with, and know the banks that or the lenders that are not as responsive, because this isn't a market you can wait 24 hours or 48 hours to have get something back. They're on vacation. Well, if they're on vacation, we want to know who's covering for them or that we can get to them and that they get back to us, almost immediately.
Yeah, I mean, I try to come from a place of it's smooth if you don't need to ask me the status. So if you're getting updated statuses every day or two on what's, even if there's nothing going on, hey, the appraisal's in review, everything else is set with underwriting. Like those constant updates. Some realtors I'm texting, some I'm emailing, some we're getting on the phone once a week to do a pipeline review and all that if we're doing a lot of different deals
Hmm.
together. So yeah, communication is big, and I don't want you to have to call me on a Thursday afternoon asking, "Hey, did the appraisal come in?" That never happens to me. Why? Because the minute that appraisal comes in, there's an email going out to everyone
Yeah.
automatically that the appraisal came in, and hey, we'll let you know if there's an issue. So I love the proactive communication. It feels like you appreciate that too. I know most
Yeah.
lenders don't do that, but I think that's what separates good from great in this industry. So if a buyer came to you tomorrow and they needed to move fast. They're ready to roll, ready to get
Hmm.
into a home. They want to go on showings right away. What would you need from the loan side to make that work?
Basically, I need at least a pre-approval letter. I like the fact of what you were talking about now, the pre-underwritten. We try to do that as much as we can. And for a while, the realtors didn't understand the difference between a pre-approval and, underwritten.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're getting an understanding. Look, it's not just I've looked at stuff, but I still need to do more. And there are going to be conditions in that pre-approval letter. I've got this done. All we need to do is get an appraisal, everything signed, sealed, and delivered. We don't need to review. We might need pay stubs just to check and make sure, as you said earlier, that they still have a job and that,
Mm-hmm.
they're still being paid. But it's a new level of approval. It's not a pre-approval, it is approval.
No, that's huge. If you're trying to put no mortgage contingency, that's the only way really to do it without a lot of risk. Generally, the only documents we need is appraisal, title, and insurance. Those are the three
Yeah.
that we cannot get until you're under contract.
Right.
But we can do a pre-underwrite with a lot of lenders I work with in, 48 to 72 hours. But it's not
Yep.
something where, again, you come in on a Monday, you're not getting a pre-underwritten approval that day generally. So you need to have the
And,
time built in for sure. So yeah, I
and it
totally
locks you
agree.
into that. Yeah, it also locks you into that lender. I mean, I think the lender feels better because they're not going to go shop the pre-approval. You've already done all the paperwork, and in many cases they're ready to lock in a rate.
Yep, that's a good point. It definitely changes the price sensitivity when you've done all that legwork, all that due diligence up front. But you need to know who you're working with and be confident in them. What I try to do in that
Yep.
scenario, if a buyer came to me and said, "Hey, I'm working with Russ here. We're going to look at homes in Greenwich this weekend, and I need to have everything buttoned up and ready." Well, first of all, I do a full pre-approval, if not a pre-underwrite at that point.
Yeah.
Full
Hmm.
pre-approval, credit, income docs, asset docs, identity, all that stuff. Then I'm reviewing it, my processor's reviewing it. We're making sure it's all buttoned up. That's all done the same day, right? Then I'm getting
Yeah.
on the phone with you to say, "Hey, Russ, great to meet you. Look forward to working with you. Let's talk about this buyer. Let's get on the same page. Let's collaborate.
Yeah.
Before they've even gone and looked at a house, let's collaborate a little. Let me tell you about any red flags here. Let me talk to you about
Yeah.
their
Exactly.
ceiling, right? Hey, they're approved for 1.5.
Yeah.
They might be able to go to 1.6, but sometimes that's their cap. And I'm only using 10 grand a year in
Yeah.
taxes. So if you have a house with more than that, they can't buy it. They need to put down more. I'd rather have that tough conversation up front, right? With you, not with the
Yeah.
client there, with the professional.
Yeah.
And to me, that creates a good foundation for an agent relationship for sure. Whether it's our first deal or our 10th, it at least helps us to be on the same page. So you're not coming back later like, "Hey, you told me 1.5, the taxes are 12,000." Well, if we didn't talk about it, that could blow up the deal, right? And it happens all the time.
Yeah.
So I know you refer a lot of lenders and you have a lot of different boxes. So it sounds like certain scenarios you might say this is a better fit than other scenarios. But what would it mean for you in your business if, just if, you had one lender that you could refer that could do it all?
I think it's good, but I still, having done it as long as I've done, I will never refer just one lender. I still feel the need for them to go educate themselves. That might be that lender that ultimately does the deal, but I still want to make sure that they've gone and checked with the lenders that we refer to them. And because they might have a product that was there. I mean, one of the things that I think most people, they're so hung up on a 30-year mortgage. No one owns their home 30 years. So why are
Mm-hmm.
you looking at 30-year money? We can afford more. You might be able to afford more for the same monthly payment. And let's look at a different term mortgage that might give you a little bit more buying power.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I understand you're saying it's a fiduciary duty that you have as their agent to refer multiple lenders. And I get it. I can, appreciate that for sure. But I guess what I would say is ultimately, it's a goal of mine as a lender to, even if you're referring three in your head, hey, this is the best one. This is the one I know. And
Yeah,
like for me, I've had clients shop me with a couple different lenders, and I love winning those deals because it shows me that I have real value in the marketplace, you
exactly.
know?
Exactly. Yeah. And
Absolutely.
then
I love
and a lender will do what a lender can do. I mean, you've got a lot of different levers that you can pull that basically can make it attractive. I think the hardest lender to compete against, though, as I've found in my career, at least, is if they're working for a bank or their company has a mortgage arm, or that's part of the perk of working, for that
I
company.
agree. I
That
won't even compete. If it's like, for example, Chase Private Banking, I've dealt with a few very high net worth individuals. And when you have several $1 million in the bank at Chase, you get a special private banker and they have a private banking mortgage division. And the interest
yeah,
rates that they give in those divisions, they're significantly lower. Not an eighth, not a quarter point. I'm talking about 100 to 200 basis points or
yeah,
greater, depending on how much you have. So if a buyer calls me and says, "Hey, I'm a Chase private banking client and I'm shopping with them," I'm not even wasting my time, to be honest with you, unless they have a
Yeah.
really complex scenario and I know Chase can't do it. I'd say go there first. Let
Yeah.
them talk to you. Let me be your last call before you make a decision. But there's not a lot of time to waste in those scenarios. So Russ, I really appreciate your time. And to our listeners, that's a wrap here on our episode today of Connecticut Real Estate Edge. And Russ, thank you for taking the time to share your perspective. 40 plus years in Greenwich. And it's clear the reason that clients keep coming back to you for the same reasons that they send their friends and family and all that, because you genuinely care. And that shows up in every deal. I think we can really sense that in our interview today. So if you
Thank
are a
you.
buyer or seller anywhere in Greenwich, from Old Greenwich, Riverside, all the way to the back country, Russell's a great option, at least somebody to discuss the market with all his knowledge. So, Russ, can you go ahead and give all of our listeners your contact of where they can reach out to you?
Yeah, I'm at Compass office in Greenwich, 200 Greenwich Avenue. My cell phone is 203-524-4998. And my email is Russell, Russell, dot Pruner, Pruner, at compass.com.
All right. Well, thank you, Russ, again. And if our listeners have any mortgage questions, you know where to find me. Head to robgw.com, grab a time on my calendar. I'd love to support you. And if today's conversation was useful, please subscribe to the podcast, leave us a review, and share this with somebody else who's thinking about making a move in Connecticut. We'll see you on the next episode. Take care.
Thank you.